Hey, kia ora. Good morning. Welcome to Tune Up Tuesday. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling start to the day. I am Helen Brahms and coming to you live from Mesa in Arizona. Oh my gosh, that was a mouthful and a half. How has your morning been? My morning has been off to a beautiful, amazing, incredible start this morning. This morning I did something that I hadn't done before. Um, I use the app a lot. I have an app on my phone. It's called Calm, and it is amazing. You get celebrities soothing you to sleep if you wish. Some actors have very soothing voices, and they just you just drift off to. Although with me, I'm sort of like in that twilight zone thing until it finishes, and then I go to sleep. If I decide to use it to help me go to sleep. Um, but this morning I decided to wake up, and they do these little 10-minute meditation things in the morning to help you start the day. So I thought, well, I'll try that today. So I tried that today. I thought, yeah, that felt okay. Didn't really feel any different to what I normally did when I woke up and everything else. But then I listened to a podcast they had on, which was about a guy and creativity, and it's like a 15-minute podcast. And so I lay there, snuggled up with Zeffy because it was cold this morning. It was like 40 something degrees outside. For you New Zealanders, that's single digits. And then I decided, okay, well, and it was very good. It was a very interesting topic about creative. This guy was an artist, and his work can be seen around the LA area, very bright, very bold. It just stands out. I can't remember the guy's. Actually, I can tell you the guy's name. We'll have a quick look on the do a quick look here. Oops, hang on, that's the wrong app. Try that one. Um, they did a harnessing creativity, and they won't. Let me tell you. It was trying to remember who it was. Hang on. That won't let me back in there again. Come on, I want to. What if you want to go back and listen to these things? Oh, Shepherd Ferry was the guy, and he apparently did the Obama Hope thing that you see around LA. He's the one that designed all of that. Um, but yeah, it was interesting listening to him about how he gets creative and how he gets his creativity and stuff. And so we listened to that, and then I said to Zephyr, I said, "Come on, time to get up." And she just burrows down a little further, and I thought, okay, so we just snuggled for a little. So we had a kind of a very relaxing, slow start to that because it was cold, and the heat was on because I could hear it coming on. So I knew it had to be at least below. It had to be below 55 inside the RV because the heat was on because the heat only comes on if it's below 55. And so when the heat turned off, I said to Zeph, I said, come on, time to get up. And so I got up, I made the bed around her. She stayed snuggled up in her little corner of the bed there. I've got a body pillow around a corner that she can snuggle into, and she lays on a comforter, which I've made into so she's kind of in like a little nest area. And so she just burrowed down into that. And then she kind of like puts her head up and opens one eye and just watches me as I'm moving around, getting ready to start the day and stuff. And then when I was dressed, she decided, oh, maybe I'll get up now. And she gets up and stretches. And we did some stretching this morning, which was awesome. And then we went out for our walk. And it was cold outside. It was beautiful. And I just checked the temperature before I came on, and it was 50 degrees outside, which for my Celsius friends is only 10. So we knew it had to be colder than that outside before we went out for our walk because I was bundled up. We've got the long sleeve shirt on today. I have my fleece jacket on. I even pulled out my Stetson to keep my head warm. Even standing in the sun, we were still a little cold. So it was interesting. But we had a nice walk. We came back invigorated by it because I love these brisk, cold mornings because they're great days that just help you get started. And I love having cold showers on days like this. Um, and although I did put a little heat into it because the water coming out of the holding tank was freezing. It wasn't freezing because it wasn't frozen, but it was cold. And so we put just a little heat in it just to take just a tinge of it off. Still had a nice cold shower because when that water hits, the body just like vibrates and just wakes up and even though you stand there shivering, you learn to breathe through it, and start thinking and it wake us up the creativity side of the brain. So you just let the creativity flow. And it actually came up with this morning for me. It came up with different ways go about the issue I'm having trying to find the last 4 great-great-grandparents. And so I've got a different angle. I've now come up with different ways I can go in there and attack from different angles. Instead of trying to go straight back, I'm going to go sideways a little bit. Because sometimes you got to go sideways in genealogy to go up. And by going sideways, I mean look for siblings. Because sometimes when you find siblings, you can find a document that has the parent's name on there. So we're going to go look for siblings today for those great-great-grandparents, for the great-grandparents to help us find the information on the great-great-grandparents. And so we're going to go sideways a little bit to help us go upwards. So it's been a fantastic start to the day. I had a great training session. I even enjoyed a chocolate muffin this morning. I haven't had a chocolate muffin in months. But anyway, so back to Tune Up Tuesday. Woohoo! Oh, it is so good. It is so much fun. All right, we're rolling the sleeves up. We're getting in here. So we're going back to our book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Think Positive, Live Happy. We have one here. It's called The Right Dream. And I read this and I thought, oh my gosh, I can so relate to this story in a very different way to how, with what the topic of the story was about. My life is very similar, but in a completely different way. And the quote here from Gail Lynn Goodwin says, "The clearer you are when visualizing your dreams, the brighter the spotlight will be to lead you on the right path." I like that. So here we go. The right dream. Are we ready? All right. After working, and see if any of this resonates with you, because I know there are a lot of people out there that this resonates with. I have seen it happen time and time again. I have experienced this. I have experienced it more than once, and we'll talk about that at the end of the thing. Well, maybe comments throughout. I like to do that. Anyway, the right dream. After working for nearly a decade at the same dead-end job with no advancement and no pay increase, I was contemplating leaving the profession for good when I got a job offer I couldn't pass up. I was offered the position of office manager for a struggling company that had been operating at a loss for over a year. My job would be to organize the office, hire and fire as needed, and help turn a losing operation into a profitable one. The owner knew that would be no easy task, and because of same, he offered me a salary I had only dreamed of, paid vacation, sick leave, and a 401k. Since my current job offered zero benefits, it took me only 2 seconds to accept. I had colleagues in the business who were willing to come aboard for the benefits alone. With the owner's permission, I had friends and family, including my husband, who shared the same vision I did, to make the firm the biggest and the best in the business. When we became profitable, I was promoted to state manager with a substantial salary increase. I managed 2 offices with 44 employees working in 5 separate departments, with plans to open a 3rd office on the drawing board. As sometimes happens when one goes from rags to riches, as our income increased, so did our spending. My husband and I moved from our small apartment to a large, beautiful home near the office. Since the job entailed a considerable amount of entertaining, our house was filled to overflowing with high-end quality furniture, which I had purchased on the installment plan to improve my credit rating. We had 2 beautiful cars in the driveway. By all appearances, we were living the American dream. I'll never forget the Friday that I was walking around the office, looking forward to the weekend, and encountered our company attorney. He wordlessly handed me a sealed envelope. The letter inside was brief. It stated that due to recent downturn in the economy, the company had reorganized and my position had been eliminated. Effective immediately, I was to leave the premises. When I looked up after reading it, I noticed that 7 other employees had been given the same envelope, including my husband. The aftermath was devastating. We got new jobs, but in a different profession and only making minimum wage. We were forced to move out of our house into a tiny apartment. The furniture and one of our cars were repossessed. Even worse than the loss of our possessions was the loss of self-esteem. Somewhere along the way, I had equated my identity with my job, i.e., since I had an important job, then that made me important. How often have we done that? And somewhere along the way, I measured my personal success by how many big and expensive things I owned. The more possessions, the more successful I was. Without that important job and without all those possessions, I thought of myself as unimportant and unsuccessful. The sudden loss of our jobs was heartbreaking, but as with most misfortunes, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. how often are challenges blessings in disguise? Um, it forced us to come to a complete stop and analyze what we really wanted out of life and what we needed to get there. We realized we'd worked 24/7, 365 days a year to keep that company afloat and profitable. We had sacrificed time with our friends and families and even each other to advance in a corporate world that in the end didn't appreciate, deserve, or value our efforts. We had missed the important births, funerals, graduations, and weddings. It's been years now since we both lost our jobs, and our lives did change for the better. Now our home is modest but fully paid for. We don't have a lot of things that need dusting and maintenance, only the necessities. We don't finance or use credit cards anymore. If we don't have the cash, we don't buy it. Now I can honestly say my husband and I are truly living and enjoying the American dream. And that was by Pam Free. I loved this story when I read it because it reminded me so much of how um, how much we can tie the success we're having in a job with our self worth. You know, oh, we're worth this. They're paying us this. This is awesome. Our self esteem and everything. And when you lose that job, it all goes away, and it's like, what did I do wrong? When it's absolutely nothing to do with you. I still remember the day I got told that I was being laid off by Marriott. It was an amazing day. We were in 103-degree heat. It was the 21st of June. Oh, sorry, it was the 16th of June 2010. We were in 103-degree heat somewhere in the California desert. We'd stopped at a gas station to fill up. They had a Dairy Queen attached. So while I was walking Gus and giving him some water, Brad was inside and he got us Dairy Queen ice creams and got them chocolate dipped. Remember, we're in 103-degree Fahrenheit heat, which is somewhere in the 40s for my Celsius friends. He comes out with these ice creams. They're dripping. We get back into the Yukon, and we're sitting there. We're slurping on these ice creams because they're just melting really fast. And he turns the engine on. The AC is running, so the AC can run all that sort of thing. And the phone rings, and the first 6 digits I knew was Marriott headquarters. And I had been waiting for a call from them because we were reorganizing the training department, which is where I was part of. And there have been different jobs that we'd applied for, and my job was basically going away because they were releasing they were going to be leasing the facility that we were in anymore. They were going to be getting rid of that at the end of the lease. So I knew my job as facility manager was going to go away at that point. But that wasn't happening until the following February. And so I answered the phone, and it was Robin from recruiting. And so I said, well, I said, excuse my slurping, but we're sitting in 103-degree heat here in California, and we're eating Dairy Queen ice creams. And she just starts laughing. She says, well, that's okay. Then she suddenly gets all serious. She says, well, the reason I'm calling is to tell you that you didn't get any of the jobs you applied for. Now, I'd applied for 5 different positions, and it didn't matter where in the US I was situated for any of these 5 positions. And I said, really? She goes, yeah. I said, none of them? She goes, no, none of them. I went, really? She goes, yeah. I go, that's awesome. And there was dead silence on the other end of the phone. And Brad's kind of like, look, by this stage, we're back on the road. And Brad's kind of like looking at me as he's driving and eating ice cream. And so we carry on talking. I said, okay, so what happens next? And so she told me what was going to happen next and all that sort of stuff. And we finished our conversation. And I get off the phone and Brad's like, well, who was that? I said, oh, it was Robin from recruiting. And he goes, so what job did you get? Because he thought my awesome meant I had got a job. I went, none of them. And I mean, I'm like literally bouncing with energy in the seat. So we're driving along. I'm still eating my ice cream. And I'm bouncing with energy. And I say, I got none of them. He goes, what did you mean you got none of them? And then he just goes on this complete tirade as he's driving down the road. He finishes ice cream at this point. So he's got both hands on the steering wheel, gripping on for dear life. You can see the white knuckles. And he's like having this tirade as he goes down the thing. And I'm like, you don't get it. And I'm like bouncing with excitement in the seat. He's like, I said, you don't get it. He goes, what do you mean I don't get it? And when he finally comes down, I said, you just don't get it. He goes, what? He says, why aren't you upset? And I go, no. I said, stop. I said, you don't get it. He goes, why is that? I said, we still have the travel business. Because by that stage, we were working part-time in our travel business. I said, we still have the travel business. I said, but now we have the opportunity to be able to go out. We can go networking. We can now work the business how we've wanted to because we've always had that job over there in the way. And so as I kept talking about this, and the things that we would now be able to be free. We didn't know what my termination date was at this point, but now that we knew that I had a termination date coming up and that I was getting severance pay and all of this, we now knew we could now open up the plans that we'd wanted to for our business and actually work them without having to worry about trying to work around a full-time job. And so by the time we got to by the time we got to my mother-in-law's place, he was completely calmed down, and he was kind of on board with it. He was still a little upset and kind of on board. I was off the charts with excitement. I was super, super, super excited. And then when she was talking about downsizing and everything else, when I was sitting in the house after Brad had passed, I was there a few months later. It was March 15th, 2018. And people go, "Why do you remember dates?" I said, "This is certain things you remember." And it was 2 days before St. Patty's Day. Because St. Patty's Day that I went, it was the first day I went looking at RVs. And when I was looking around the house, I was looking at all the stuff that was there. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to pack up all this stuff. I've got to sort through it. I've got to pack it all up. I've got to move it. I've got to find somewhere to go. And as the list of to-dos started coming up with having to move and find a new find a place, I knew I didn't want an apartment, but having to find a house, would I find a house in my price range, and blah, 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 blah. All the doubts started creeping in, all the worries started creeping in, and then I just suddenly blurted out to myself in an empty house, screw it. I'm going to just sell all this crap and go live in an RV. And I remember sitting there and like looking around my recliner where I was sitting at the time going, well, who the hell said that? And then I realized, oh, that was me. And so I sat there and I thought about it. I thought, not such a stupid idea. And I've been in this RV now since it took me 14 months to find sparkles. I've been living in this RV. I purchased her on the 4th of May of 2019. Been living in her ever since. Have not regretted a day of it, because I have just what I need around me. Yes, I still have storage units that have to be gone through. I know that because we didn't get rid of everything, but we managed to get into storage. So I do have storage I still have to go through. But now, having lived in the RV for as long as I have, and looking at buying a permanent home base, looking at buying a home base where I can spend the winter months, now I've got somewhere where I can bring the stuff out of storage. I know I'm not going to have room in my new place to get it, because my new place is not going to be much bigger than the RV. It's only going to be about 400, maybe 600 square feet. So now I've got somewhere that I can bring some of the stuff to, well, we'll be able to bring the stuff to. Most of the places that I'm looking at are coming fully furnished. So I'm sort of like, oh, I already have some furniture. And I kind of like my furniture. Some of my furniture is like, we bought it when we bought our house back in Virginia, which was back in '98. I've still got couches. I have 2 couches. It's a 2-seater and a 3-seater that we bought the November of '98. So that was what, 22 years ago? 22 years ago. They're still like they're brand new. They've got inner sprung cushions, inner sprung bases, and they're brand new. There's a little bit of fading on them, but not a lot. But there's virtually no wear and tear on them, and yet they're the most comfortable couch. They're a little on the narrow side though, but they are very comfortable couches to sit on. And they're currently sitting in storage. So there's a couple of things sitting in storage, and it's sort of like, oh, but I'm going to have to go and there'll be somebody else's furniture there. And that kind of creeps me out a little bit, especially the bed thing. So that would be the first thing changed. I'll be getting a new bed as soon as I get into the thing. When I find the place that I'm purchasing. Haven't found it yet. Still looking. But knowing that I don't need a lot of stuff, and living in the RV shows me that I don't need a lot of stuff, yet somehow I have managed to fill up different areas within this RV. I still have a lot of cabinets that are empty, which is awesome. But some are packed, and the reason they're packed is so the stuff doesn't move around when you're moving, when you're driving and things. And so I know that I have to go through those, and I've been through the underbed storage already. Half of the underbed storage is now completely empty. There's just got my yarns in there, some spare pillows, about 6 books, and what else is in there? Oh, my little musical instrument thingy. You must pull that back out again. And there's very little, and some toiletry items that don't fit into the bathroom cabinets because I don't have the space in there to store the extra toiletry items. And so that's all in there under the storage thing. And now I have somewhere to put stuff that normally goes on the bed or gets tucked under the table when we're traveling. I've now got somewhere I can put it when we travel. So I'm kind of like, yes, we're getting a little more organized here. And so I do have some other areas that I have to go through and clean up. I have a 2-foot high pile of magazines, and that's not even all of them. I still have 2 cardboard boxes to go through where there's going to be more magazines coming out of. But you realize that you don't need a lot to live on. For some reason, people equate the more money you have, the more you have to show it. And it's like, no, live simply. Start making that little, this is our tune up lesson. Start making those little tweaks to leading a simple life. Life does not have to be complicated. This space in here between these two things, our ears, um, it can complicate things so much. It's just like take a deep breath, blow it out, and let's look at this from a very simple perspective. Life is simple if we make it simple. When we make it complicated, that's when we start getting all twisted up inside and everything else. And this woman, Gail Lynn Goodwin said in her quote, "The clearer you are when visualizing your dreams, the brighter the spotlight will be to lead you on the right path." So get crystal clear in your dreams. Do you really need the big 24 bedroom house with the swimming pools and the stables and the 1,000 manicured acres and all that sort of stuff? Do you really need a place that big? Would it be nice? And I'm like thinking, years ago, when thinking about stuff like that, yeah, that would have been nice. But now that I'm by myself and I just got my dog, I'm like, I don't need all that space. What would I do with that space? It would just be me most of the time rattling around in a place like this, in a place with 4 or 5 bedrooms. The only time they'll be filled up is if the kids came to visit or the grandkids came to visit. But how often is that throughout a year? I don't need all that space. So now it's just sort of like looking at what do I actually need to live in? And, let's, instead of having the stuff, let's create those moments. So get rid of the stuff. So here's your tune up thing. Start getting rid of stuff and instead of using the money to buy stuff, use the money to create memories, to create moments, to create those experiences. Start gathering the experiences. Because when you start getting and taking the family with you, because when you start doing these things together as a family, you become closer as a family. You have more memories to cherish. Because at the end of your life, it's not going to be how many houses do I own, how many cars did I have, how much money was I making. What it comes down to at the end of life is how much time did I spend with my family? How much time did I spend getting to know my kids, getting to know my grandkids, getting to know my siblings? What memories did I create with my family that will live on with them? So start asking yourself those questions, because having had a husband being asked those questions, what did he regret? What are some of his biggest regrets? There are some that I will not talk about publicly, but the one that I do talk about publicly, and at the time we only had one grandchild, and his one of his biggest regrets was he would never get to see his grandkids grow up. And at that point, he only had one grandchild. His second grandchild came along just on a year after he had gone, that he had transitioned. Um, so he's got 2 grandkids with a third one on the way, and his biggest regret was he would never get to see them grow up. So take a look. Today about with your tune up. Take a look at what you have. What do you really need, and get rid of the rest. That's it from me. Have a super fantastic Sparkling Tune Up Tuesday, and we'll catch you guys later this evening. And this evening, we're going to be talking a little bit about DNA and genealogy and traits. So have a super fantastic Sparkling day, and we'll catch you guys later on. Hei konara!